Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Just Tiltum. We are on episode 6, and I am here joined by the full team of Just Tiltum. We have Kantos,
Hey, how's it going?
and we've got Harry.
What's up, guys and girls? Well, actually, no girls watch our podcast, but
Don't limit our demographics just yet.
Don't do that.
okay.
So we'll honestly just hop right into it because there's no reason for us to hide the fact that we're excited, we're happy. TSM had a 4-0 weekend, very convincing victories against both COG and Dignitas. COG being our former rivals, and Dignitas. Yeah, we'll talk about them. So
Being Dignitas, yeah. Oh, but it feels so good, man. It feels so good.
right, yeah, it feels good. Even if it wasn't against the best teams in the league, it feels good to see TSM on a definite uptick heading toward the end of the split. So if you guys are ready, we'll go ahead and hop into these games.
Awesome.
All right, so starting off with TSM versus COG. Does Riot still call this El Clasico? Have they finally dropped that?
No, they still call it that.
Do? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I think we're a bit out of El Clasico territory. TSM has a very strong winning record against CLG,
It is
and
now called Clown Fiesta.
yeah. So coming into game one, we actually, for those who aren't aware, we actually did a mini-sode that turned into a full episode with the people from the CLG Faithful podcast, being Nefarious and Arton. Yes, Arton, and we were discussing our trend.
Jesus Christ, dude.
Well, his name isn't lit up, so Either way,
Yeah.
either way, we were discussing what we were expecting coming into this series. Obviously, the people from the COG podcast were saying that they wanted COG to win. We obviously said we wanted TSM to win, but we were all kind of in agreement that it had a strong chance of going as a 2-1 series in either direction, but flat out 2-0. And for me, it started out with that pick and ban. I don't know what was COG thinking with this all AD comp. Can anyone possibly enlighten me, Kantos? Maybe.
And this is something that we had. I got a little frustrated before when we were talking about this, just because looking into this comp, it just. At the start, you're picking up that Jace right off the bat, and that just seemed like a denial pick. And that's okay. If he feels like he wants to play Jace, that's alright, we can kind of do that. The Graves pick is a comfort pick, but going, a heavy AD mid laner and a heavy AD jungler, of course with your AD carry, it already seems like a kind of AD stacked team. So at this point, it's time to pick up some AP damage, or at least some not AD damage, as I kind of put it here. So eventually we get to this point where we're stacked with 3 full AD, and we get to our second ban phase, and we ban the they ban the Renekton, which, okay, if that's really something that you thought was going to disrupt your comp. And then they first pick the Poppy. They first pick an AD style champion. And then normally, okay, maybe a Poppy is what you were going for. Maybe that's what your comp is looking for here, and that may not be bad. But the real problem is that you're leaving open Tree SM. You're leaving open the Maokai, which would have provided some of the AP damage that you would have wanted, or at least the not AD damage, with a solid tank front line, and you would have denied the Maokai from Haunzter. I can't really, and again, I'm not a coach or a professional, but it just kind of seemed like as soon as they picked that Jace, that the Jace was just like a panic pickup, and they were trying to keep it away from Bjergsen, and they kind of lost their flow in the pick and ban, and just didn't. I don't know why they didn't pick up that Maokai. I don't know why the Maokai was not something that they even considered banning. It was just something that they wanted to let slip through the cracks. So that was my biggest frustration, is they drafted an all AD comp and allowed Haunzter to have something like Maokai, which will do so well building all armor, which clearly he did. So yeah, I can't explain it.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head saying that panic seemed to be a bit of the theme here. Harry and I were actually discussing in the chat that COG were playing very desperately, but also kind of had to play very desperately. Because it isn't that all AD comps don't work. They can work. It's just that if you aren't ridiculously far ahead and you don't end the game extremely quickly, that your enemy is going to pick up armor, and all of a sudden your primary, really your only source of damage is being mitigated by the entire team. I believe this was a game where even Wild Turtle ended up picking up Ninja Tabby because everybody is AD. So, I mean, of course he's playing the Varus, so you don't really need Berserker's Greaves when you're just holding down Q and firing into the crowd and flash ulting people. But yeah, it was just such a strange pick. I think that above all, though, those CLG had a strange pick. Bjergsen had a pretty solid game on Syndra, and I know, Harry, you and I were talking about in one of the earlier episodes that his positioning seemed to be a little off, but this game was pretty good from him. Don't you agree?
Yeah, so Afternoon tried super fucking hard to kill Bjergsen. Like, I don't know, Afternoon, like, woke up on the wrong side of the bed, and he was like, you know what? Fuck Bjergsen. Fuck that dude. He's a fucking asshole. And he tried to kill him over and over again in the mid lane. And for some, like, really clutch shockwaves and some really good summoner spells, Bjergsen managed to stay alive even for, like, the enormous amount of pressure put on him. He never actually died this game, which is really freaking impressive considering just how much pressure is put in that lane. And it set the groundwork for CLG actually having a counterproductive roams because they left Stixxay by himself with Wild Turtle and Biofrost, and the roams in the mid lane just didn't pay off at all. Bjergsen was still able to very convincingly beat Hui in lane, just CS wise. So it was just kind of a dud of an early game for CLG, and eventually it turned into a mid late game where like it became like there was literally no way to kill TSM because they're all just naturally going to be much tankier and much stronger than CLG's lineup.
Yeah, it turned into a bit of a stomp game. By the time Bjergsen and Syndra came online and everyone was stacking armor, like you said, Kantos, we had Triasem going in full effect. It just didn't seem like a game where CLG picked a win condition for themselves that was viable past maybe 25-30 minutes at the latest. And this game ended up going right to 45 minutes. So, you know, TSM outlasted them. They outplayed them around the map very consistently, and they wrapped up game one pretty easily. So for MVP, going to you first, Kantos. Who do you got MVP game one? What are you thinking for it?
So this was a really solid game from pretty much everybody on TSM. We all played really well. Turtle had a pretty decent game overall. He had some really nice snipes, some really good ults. He had some questionable positioning at certain points. That mid positioning was a little strange, especially with no vision. So other than that, and some of the decisions that he made, and some of the points where he was just getting caught, and you're kind of thinking, I can't really sit here and yell at you for this mistake, but you probably shouldn't have made that. Just it's not something that you should have done in typical Wild Turtle fashion in terms of positioning. But I'm going to have to probably throw it back towards Bjergsen, who's had some seriously questionable Syndra games this entire split, and then finally brings it back out. And this is old, Copenhagen Wolves style Bjergsen, and it was just refreshing to see some good, solid Syndra coming out of Bjergsen. So I'm going to give it to Bjergsen.
All right, sounds good. And what about you, Harry? You agree on that Bjergsen pick?
Well, yep, Bjergsen Syndra is it's back. It's still as dominant as it was before. Copenhagen Wolves style, So I think Bjergsen played the best of anyone at TSM.
All right, sounds good. So that'll take us right along into game two, CLG v TSM. And with us praising that Syndra pick, CLG let us have it again. And I also would like to point out that with all the hype, I guess you could say, that Huhi's Aurelion Soul gets, TSM didn't even see the need to ban it. I know that there was a point in time where Aurelion Soul was one of those bans that you always threw out against CLG because they were able to so effectively play the map with the champion. But CLG actually played Aurelion Soul in their third game against P1, which was fairly instrumental in taking the victory. But I think it does speak volumes about CLG's power picks in this current meta where TSM doesn't even feel the need to remove Huhi from what many consider to be his signature champion at this point. Fortunately, though, with that being said, CLG did have a more well-rounded draft coming into Game 2. They had the Ezreal, they had the Orianna, Rengar, Renekton, and Alistar. So a lot more of a well-rounded comp, not so tunneled into dealing one type of damage, but TSM was still just a better team overall. And I thought what was interesting was we saw Biofrost on Malzahar, and you and I, really everyone, Cantos, we've all talked about how Biofrost has seemed to struggle on some of these supports, but I think this was a pretty clean game from him overall.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. I think this was a pick that we have been constantly banning away, just because we don't feel comfortable taking it ourselves. And it was refreshing to see Biofrost jump on that Malzahar pick and actually do well. They won their lane pretty decently. Obviously, Malzahar gives great push overall. And I was very impressed to see Biofrost kind of expanding his champion pool. He's really kind of coming into his own as a support there and not just being, the one tricks here or there. He's actually well-rounded himself pretty nicely, and so hopefully we can see more good Malzahars from him. But something else I just want to quick jump on is CLG's comp this game, which I actually, looking at it on paper, I really like. And if you imagine it, it's pretty much a ball delivery system everywhere on the map. You have the Renekton to dash in ball delivery system. You have the Rengar to jump in ball delivery system. You have the Alistar to jump in ball delivery system. And this is something that has worked for CLG in the past, is to create that ball delivery system for the Orianna, and they just couldn't get the, they say they couldn't get the ball rolling there. See? Yeah, see? All right. There it is. But yeah, I liked CLG's comp on paper. It didn't function out. And I going back now, jumping back forward to what we were just talking about, I am very happy with the entire bot lane this game, actually. But in particular, Biofrost kind of expanding his champion pool and getting better on these supports that he has previously struggled on. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that one of the things that was interesting about this game is even with who he on that Orianna, like you said, having so many tools to get the Orianna ult into a TSM team fight, it just never seemed to pan out so much. We had Haunzter on Poppy, and Haunzter has shown time and time again that he's comfortable on essentially every tank pick that's meta, Poppy included. And I don't know, I think overall we were more consistent as a team. But what's interesting to me looking at this game is that we we had picks that were, I'm not going to say reflective of CLG in a style, but to me this was a game where it's almost like we took pieces of CLG's old strategy and just did it a little better than them, and it turned into a 27-minute stomp. I mean, they got no dragons this game at all. We had 2 Infernal, we had an Ocean Drake, we had Baron that we got, what was it, Harry, like 20 some odd minutes into the game?
It was like 22 minutes.
Yeah, I mean,
it was off of an ace in the jungle for us.
Yeah, and I think that's indicative of this accelerated and improved mid game play that TSM has really been showing in these recent games. I don't know, like you said, Cantos, like you mentioned, Harry. I'm just glad to see that TSM is still improving. There were a lot of people worried about it coming into this split, but one of the instrumental factors in that has been Haunzter, and he showed up in this series, and he really showed up in the next series, which we'll get to in just a second. But I mean, I don't know. This game doesn't really seem like it has much for us to discuss. TSM won, and they won hard. So, do we have any MVPs for Game 2 that maybe be outstanding? My heart still leans toward Bjergsen on his Syndra. I have a soft spot.
Yeah,
I have.
Well, that shitter gave up first blood, so we're not giving it to him.
Right.
And we're gonna. I don't know. This one was like at the. I don't know. This game was just, we just like rolled over them super hard. I don't know. I actually, excuse me, personally, I'd probably give it to the Shen. I thought the Shen was just super good. I don't know. Like, I felt like it was just like Haunzter used to be like really bad. Well, not really bad, but it used to be a suboptimal pick for them, and it turned into like a really, really strong pick for TSM. To the point where he's just like downright winning games for them with his taunts. in the jungle, especially in those corridors. So I'll give it to Haunzter personally because I think it's the biggest reason we won some of those fights.
Okay. I'm kind of tied here between Bjergsen for playing another great Syndra game, and just Biofrost just because I'm happy again that he's on new picks and things that we had previously. I just think it's more important that he feels comfortable enough to play it, because then it's not something that we feel like we have to ban out constantly, which is it takes away a ban, and that can be frustrating for our draft. And the fact that he feels comfortable enough that he can possibly take it is a positive to me. So I think for this game in particular, it's probably just going to be Bjergsen. But I think if we were to give it an MVP in terms of what's going to affect the team most, I think if Biofrost can continue to have great Malzahar games, it's going to help our draft a lot in the future. So yeah.
Okay, so I'm an idiot. I don't know why I thought he picked Shen this game. I'm crazy. I haven't VOD reviewed this game, so I'm just stupid. He picked Poppy, so derp. So I still thought like I just got the two champs confused. He still played really really well in the Poppy. He got did he get to level 1? I don't think he did.
No, I don't think that was
No,
in this game. No.
not level 1. I'm not. Jesus Christ, I don't know why I'm saying level 1. I think he got I think this game actually started off with a 2-0 lead for CLG. And he got dove by I don't remember. God, I should really remember. My bad. But yeah, I think for the rest of the game he played super well. He just had really really good ease, and yeah. So I don't know why I said Shen. It's Poppy. So yeah, but I still get the answer because I thought I played really well.
Yeah, and I think we're at a point in TSM's roster where Bjergsen and Haunzter are really standing out as the star players of our team. A lot of people were giving Dyrus flack for recommending Haunzter as a pickup, and here we are a year and some change later, and he's, in my opinion, easily the best top in North America right now. I don't think there's a whole lot of competition for him in terms of skill and also in terms of dominance, I guess you could say. And we saw a lot of that dominance in this Dig series, especially in that second game. But we'll get to game two. We'll start at game one first, where Haunzter did have that Shin paired with Svenskaren's Rengar, Bjergsen on his ear, Turtle on Ash, Biofrost on his, in my opinion, now patented Karma. I think he's played Karma as a support more than just about any champion that I've seen from Biofrost anyway. But TSM Dig. This was actually an interesting game because, in my opinion, Keen was he was setting himself up to carry Dig to a game one win. He was actually laning very well against Bjergsen. He bullied him out of lane a few times. Even though Bjergsen ended up going deathless, he definitely didn't have a comfortable time in mid lane, and we were actually behind going into about 25 minutes, I believe. I think there was one point in the stream where they showed the damage graph, and typical Dig game where they get really really far ahead, and then all of a sudden they throw it Baron, and that's kind of what happened here with the Baron 50-50. But we'll start with the early parts of the game where Chaser was camping out Haunzter really hard with Someday, and I think that kind of set the stage for Dig to begin building this lead that they eventually threw away. Cantos, I'm what I'm curious about is, do you think that this was a game that TSM could have lost, or do you think that even with us being as behind as we were at some points in the game, we would still be able to just outplay Dignitas had they not thrown everything away on a 50-50 Baron?
They were beating us pretty handily, just in terms of control of the game, and I think that's something that we kind of had to wrestle back there. It was definitely a close game. Certain aspects were, positives. Obviously, Bjergsen was playing pretty nicely, but the Haunzter and Svenskeren, man, were getting beat up. They were getting crushed almost everywhere that they went together, and eventually they just started turning that around. So I definitely think that's something that we could have lost. I think Dignitas made some serious throws. I think losing that second Baron was a big problem. I think that run up mid was a big problem. But I think on top of that, it was a really good capitalization by TSM, and I once again want to point out that I believe that this was Haunzter's TSM, in the sense that he was just kind of leading the charge here and just turning around this game, because both of those mistakes were bad, but with the way that Dignitas had previously been playing, that's probably something that they still could have won against another team. But the way that TSM really turned it around and kind of made it their own game, I think it was something that we do really well with in terms of finding our lead and pushing that lead. So I think Haunzter's TSM really pushed us through here, but it's definitely a game we could have lost. I definitely could have seen us still losing that game even by winning those fights.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I was actually thinking that Dig was going to take this game from us, and then of course the Baron throw happened. But Harry, what I really want to get into is that play in mid lane where Dig let us flank them, and then they just continue walking toward our base, like just walking to their deaths, not really hoping that we get this inhibitor as TSM slaughters us and flanks us. Is there any kind of strategic precedent for that move, or was it Dig just panic buttoning and let's go get an objective and hope that they don't notice that we're in their base?
So they thought they out Rotorino'd TSM, and in fact, TSM had out rotated them by flanking them straight up the butthole. um, so like I don't, oh man, like the easiest way TSM wins fight with this Shangar comp is literally just like come in from behind, get like their carries first. I think they killed Cassiopeia right off the bat, which just meant that they kind of just won the fight. Um, and it was just like a really stupid call from Dig, honestly. I mean, they just weren't mindful of their positioning. They weren't thinking. I think they were just like, oh, an inhibitor, wow. And so they all went as five to get it, and then they got aced, and then immediately we just ended the game. Um, Not a lot to say other than Dig's late game shot calling is a fucking travesty. Um, yeah, that was just an auto loss. I don't understand why they would ever think that's a good idea. Just like because that is how TSM wins fights really easy. They get like a flank, and yikes, that was that was really bad for Dig. But I also want to talk about the Barons. So I think the Barons they felt pressured into the Barons because TSM was taking so much on the other side of the map. So so they were like right by Baron are like, okay, well we aren't really ready for this Baron, but we're gonna take it anyway because TSM's like actually like just manhandling us macro wise. So and it worked out for them the first time, but it's still just such a risky call. It's a 50-50 Baron. So if you're the head team like Dignitas was, it's just an inherently bad play to make because when you're ahead as a mac in a macro sense, you should be able to like make plays that work 80 or 90% of the time, not 50% of the time. That's just nullifies your macro advantage and your gold advantage. So it was just really bad shot calling. I think they got a bit lucky at that first Baron, but the second time, their luck ran out. TSM was able to secure the Baron. I think didn't they win the team fight after that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I believe that did.
Yeah, but I mean, TSM was still just taking stuff around the map, towers, and they're catching up in gold, and eventually, and then eventually it just really randomly and suddenly ended with that like really weird play in the mid lane. So it's kind of a sporadic, random game to some extent. But I thought TSM overall they didn't play like terribly. Their biggest mistake was like that river fight with where they tried to re-engage for like no reason and they just got ran down by Someday. That was awkward, but other than that, I thought TSM played okay. I don't think it was like a terrible game from them. It was just they didn't play the early game as well as they could have.
Yeah, I agree, and that brings us to the topic of MVP, where I don't really think that there was a standout player here. I think this was a consistent team doing consistent team things. Would you guys agree? Is there any one player that really stood out in terms of performance in this game one against Dick for you? We'll go to Cantos first.
I'm pretty inclined to agree that pretty much everybody was around the same. Like everybody played all right once we got later in that game. It was nice that Bjergsen never died, but I think if I have to give it to anybody or any somebodies, I'll probably end up giving it to the Shengar, to both Haunter and Svenskeren. I think that at the end of it, once we finally started to turn things around, I think that he was pretty instrumental in that, or they both were instrumental, their combination there. So I'm probably going to have to give it as a tie to both of them just for what they did impact-wise in the late game. But yeah, otherwise it was a pretty alright game by everybody in that sense.
Yeah, and I'd agree. What about you, Harry? Who do you have for MVP for this game one, if any at all?
Um, I give it to, yeah, it's like teamwork was the MVP of this game. Like, I don't like, it didn't really feel like anyone like won us the team fight. It was just like we made a really obvious call and we ended up just like rolling over them. So I give it to Shen because he enables some of those plays to happen in the first place. But I mean, I don't know. It didn't feel like I was like, holy shit, Haunzter, how did you kill like that dude on our tower when four people dove you? I wasn't really thinking that game, so I was like, everyone's like doing their job, I guess. Everyone's, it's not autopilot, but it's just like no one is having like a spectacular game here. No one's like dominating this game.
Yeah, I'd agree. It wasn't a game that we pulled out by like the skin of our teeth, but I also don't think that this was a game of anyone popping off. And clearly, Hunter wasn't satisfied with nobody popping off in game one because he picked Rumble in game two, and oh my god, just kind of hopping right into it. Hunter 10-3-1, one shotting, well, two shotting Jin's under towers, whiffing Rumble ults and still killing everybody that he looks at. And really, since Garen Bjergsen, Wild Turtle, and Biofrost just kind of being there, like, yeah, okay, go Hunter. We'll get your assist for you. He had a dominating game, and I think it really started off with Dig misplaying the top pressure that they were applying with Someday and Chaser. It started off with a very awkward tower dive where Chaser walks by tower, eats two tower shots, and then keeps walking by the tower.
Yeah.
But from there, it was just a dominating performance. What do you think, Kentos? Could Haunter have carried this game any harder?
I think the only things that can, like, the only negative things that can really be said about Haunter this game is that one top lane gank where he turned around, he was out, and he turned around to try and, I guess, do more damage, but he was literally out, and I don't know why he did that. So he kind of threw away, one of his deaths there. But otherwise, the whiffed ults are probably the only other thing that you can probably criticize. Other than that, he did so well. He really did carry the game super hard. It was something to kind of throw it back in Scar's face as saying it was one of the worst Rumble performances he's ever seen, and really showing that Haunter can play more than just tanks. And it was really refreshing and really exciting and just a lot of fun. This whole game was just a lot of fun. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It was a ton of fun to watch Hunter just melt people all over the map. Everywhere he went, people died. They'd send three people after him, and then two people would be dead, and Hunter would be floating away in Rumble with his shield up, and it was just it was a crazy game. I mean, Bjergsen had a very good game on Jace. Went deathless again. I think he died one time over the course of this entire weekend. Yeah, he only died once in the COG series on his Syndra to that level 1 Rengar. But, well, not level 1, but the early game Rengar gank. But, I don't know. Haunter, he showed up for this game. He even, to me, somewhat jokingly in the post-game interview said that, it was an okay game for him. What are your thoughts on this game, Harry? I mean, like Kantos has said, like I have said, this seemed like the Haunter show in Game 2, and everybody was there to just be the supporting cast.
Yeah, kind of. Everyone was like, okay, Haunter, you just like, you play against Team Dignitas while we play against the map, and it worked out. I don't know. Dignitas just played so badly. Like, even though like Haunter did take advantage of their mistakes, Jesus Christ, Dig played so badly around it. Like, man, it was ugly sometimes, especially that dive. That was wow. I don't know what to say. So I don't know. It's just kind of like a comedy of errors by Dig that allowed. I mean, 10 kills in a professional match, and it isn't like an hour-long game. It's a lot of kills, and I think a lot of them were just because he pressed Q when he was supposed to, and he E'd when he was supposed to, and he just said. So I don't know if he's like that. This means like, oh my god, he's an incredible rebel. It's just like he was kind of in the right place at the right time, and he did what he was supposed to do. So he ended up carrying the game. Uh, yeah, I think this was more of a bad game from Dig. I did like the 20-minute bear call. That's a bold call. Even if Team Dignitas is like on the other side of the map, it's still a bold call to go for bear in 20 minutes in any game. So I appreciate the decisive shot calling and the decisive way we ended out this game. It was very clean. So we did what we had to do this game.
Yeah, I agree. So in terms of MVP, does anybody disagree with Haunzter being the MVP for this game? Any disparaging
I
reasons?
think he kind of has to be.
Yeah, I don't think that I could argue it even if I wanted to.
Yeah, it'd be pretty hard to argue against that scoreline and that performance. So, in the interest of continuing our week of talking about Haunzter, there's been buzz, some on Reddit, a bit from the caster saying that Haunzter is kind of developing into the face of the TSM franchise, and of course Bjergsen is still the best mid laner in North America, but I don't know that he's quite at that stage yet. I think he's the best top laner in North America, bar none, especially after these past 2 weeks of performances against some very strong top laners, conceptually anyway. And I don't know. I think he's developing into a franchise player for TSM, where it'll be similar to Dyrus, where you chant TSM, you think of Reggie, you think of Dyrus, and I think we're kind of getting there with Bjergsen and Haunter. But what are your thoughts? I'll ask you first, Harry. What are your thoughts on Haunter in terms of developing as, I guess, a new face of the franchise or an additional face of the franchise?
I still think he has to have like a streak of just incredible character performances like Beard or doublelift has had in the past, which I don't. I mean, he's been solid. He's been solid ever since he joined TSM. He's never had a bad stretch, and he's had some pretty good stretches. But I mean, to be the carry of TSM, you have to get over Bjerg, and not even doublelift. I think was able to do that. Like, I mean, he was always kind of considered the secondary carry of TSM behind Bjergsen, who every other game he'll just go off. So I don't think Bjergsen is taking over. Like, he's stepping up definitely. He's definitely one of the better top laners. I think Impact overall is still a better top laner if you're taking the entire split. Um, but I do think that he's the second best player on TSM, sure. I just need to see him like go impact in like a playoff series, like not just like play Maokai and like position well. I need to see him like dominate every single lane he's in. I needed him to really prove to me that he's actually the star player at TSM because I mean, you're on the team of Bjergsen, so you have a lot to live up to. And Bjergsen is just, in my opinion, the best player to ever play in North America. So I mean, it's really hard for me to say, oh yeah, he's a new face. I think of him as he's like the new Robin for Bjergsen.
Yeah, and I can see that. I personally think, and I'd like you to weigh in on this, Cantos. I personally think that we're seeing a very light parallel to Faker on SKT and the development that Marin saw as a top laner, where he went from kind of quiet to being one of the standout faces. And I think we're seeing a very similar track where it came to light that Marin was uh, an additional aggressive voice for the SKT, and all of a sudden their play went from, yeah, it's SKT and they're a solid team in LCK, to dominating Worlds run. Not saying that Haunter taking over shot calling is like the auto win to Worlds, but in your opinion, Cantos, do you think that, are you more in Harry's camp where Haunter has a long way to go before he's ever even standing beside Bjergsen, or do you think there's room on TSM for two stars to stand side by side at this moment in time?
So I think it's really exciting to watch, like, be able to physically watch a player grow, and that's something that we've really seen out of Haunter. A lot of people in the very beginning were like, "Yeah, okay, so he was all right in Gravity, but can he replace Dyrus, like the man, the myth, the legend, Dyrus?" And he's just come into his own so nicely, and he had some really good performances last year, and now all of a sudden he has taken over as this new role. And I want to kind of compare him more to what doublelift and Bjergsen had last split, where we still have Bjergsen, who's the face of TSM at this point in time. He's the star player easily, but then we had doublelift, who's sitting right behind him, is almost your secondary star or your co-star. I'm not quite sure, but another face that you think of when you think of TSM. And I think Haunzter's really developing himself into that. He's certainly making a name for himself. Just in general, and the fact that his shot calling, and we've seen it so many times, that shot calling is so insanely valued. There's somebody like Hai, who has been, he's mechanically okay, but his shot calling has been coveted more than his mechanical play for pretty much his entire career. And it's the same pretty much with Yellow Star. So we clearly see that shot calling is a huge factor in what people are looking for in teammates, and the fact that Haunzter is both, a mechanically gifted player and clearly a very good shot caller. That's something that he's really stepped up and is getting a lot better with. It's so exciting to just watch him as a player grow. And so I think the comparison to Marin there is pretty good in the sense that you're watching him grow as a player and as a shot caller and become more of a vocal portion of the team, and somebody that stands out more than just there's also that top laner who performs well when the team is performing well. He's somebody who is shining consistently so far this entire split, and I'm still excited to see where he can go from here, because it's clearly only the beginning of whatever he's trying to do, and I'm excited to watch him continue to grow. So.
Yeah, I agree. And we'll definitely keep our eyes on Haunter and the totality of the TSM League team as they close out this spring split in what looks to be a convincing fashion. I don't think that any team currently is really threatening us in our ability to get to finals. And I'm expecting that it'll stay that way. I'm sure C9 will clean their stuff up. I'm sure FlyQuest will clean up. But I don't know that any one team is going to be able to derail the momentum that we've currently built up. With all that said, we'll go ahead and transition right over to Smash Bros. We had Smash Summit this weekend, and TSM Leffen versus Armada, which is the theme of any Leffen fan who's watching any Melee tournament. Just an interesting statistic about Armada before we kick off this discussion. Since he's come back to playing about 3 years ago? I think he's won about 70% of the tournaments that he's entered. So Armada, Armada's just an extraordinarily dominant player, and Leffen has kind of always been the person there looking to challenge him in any way he can. Smash Summit was no different. We saw Leffen get knocked out by Armada not early on in the tournament, because Smash Summit is actually a very small kind of focused tournament, but he was sent to losers by Armada, where he fought M2K, Mewtwo King, and Hungry Box.
No, he went. He fought. Yeah, Hungry Box, Mewtwo King. Yeah.
But he fought them, and he ended up taking third after losing to Hungry Box. But I don't know. What's your? Do you think that Leffen will? I don't want to say can he beat Armada, because I think he can be beaten. But from what you've seen of Armada's play cantos, what do you think Leffen would have to, I guess, improve on to start more consistently challenging him? Because 70% of the tournaments that you've entered in the past 3 years, you've won. That's a pretty dominating figure. But of course, we want to see Leffen start taking those first place wins. So, in your opinion, what would Leffen have to do in order to begin to challenge Armada's throne in Melee?
So I just kind of want to throw some props Leffen's way, because we've seen him consistently pulling, top 5 at least, if not, top 3. And the fact that in a tournament as stacked as Smash Summit, we had Armada, we had Hungry Box, we had Mewtwo King, we had Mango, you know what I mean? Like, you already right there, you have 3 of the gods just sitting there, plus Armada, who's just above all of them. and you have your big talents. You have SFAT, you have Plup, you have Pew Pew U, you have Ice, you have these very good players. So this was a stacked tournament. There was a lot of very good players here, and Leffen still was able to pull out third, which I think is still really commendable. The fact that he's still sitting in that top 3 spot, but to beat Armada, it's almost. And I know that we actually can, but it's almost a question of can anyone beat Armada? It's just and I know in the last tournament we came really, really, really close. He played, Leffen played really, really well. But in terms of what he needs to do to change that, I really don't know. I think, and he's always been a dominant Fox player, and that's always been something that's been a really strong go-to for him. But I think he needs to continue to work on some of his edge guard versus getting back on the stage. That's something that Armada is really solid at, is edge guarding you and keeping you off that edge, and just pushing that advantage there. So probably something to try and work against Armada in that sense is to try and stay away from that aspect. Leffen always starts to win once he's in the center of the stage and he's starting to pull off the just flat combos. So that's probably something that I would say that Leffen needs to improve on. But still, even so, I'm gonna just want to throw out props to Leffen because top 3 in a tournament as stacked as this is huge. I think that's awesome, and I really want to see him continue to grow. He's so hungry, and I can make another hungry box joke, but I won't. But he really is. He's just very hungry for the win. He's very hungry to be the best, like no one ever was. And I want to continue to see him to grow.
Oh man, yeah. So we're trading one joke for another. That's fine.
I know. I can't stop. I'm on a roll, just like Jigglypuff.
And there it is. So yeah, and I agree. I think that Armada is extraordinarily dominant as a player. Obviously, I mean, winning just about every tournament that he touches. But I think Leffen is more than capable of challenging him. I think that at this point, Leffen has probably been the most consistent challenger of Armada that I've seen this year thus far, where he'll kind of push Armada in sets. He hasn't been able to take him in the clutch, but he also has pushed Armada at least as close to his limits as I've seen in most of their sets against one another. Yep. Leffen also played doubles with Ice at Smash Summit. You want to talk us through that real quick, Kantos?
So they took second. And I'm sure you can probably guess who they took second to. It was Leffen and Ice. We got, one of our favorite combos. Leffen really enjoys playing with Ice and vice versa. They're good friends. But we lost to Armada. What a surprise here. We had Armada and Mewtwo King, which is another really stacked. Like, that's a really very talented duo there. Armada obviously being, at this point, the best Melee player in the world, and Mewtwo King as always having been one of the best and being a god himself. So it was definitely a tough matchup, but once again, you got to give props. Second place in a tournament as stacked as this is still pretty good. And I know that Leffen and Ice wanted more, and we obviously wanted more for them, but I don't want to throw away the fact that they still got that second place. It's still really solid. But yeah, they lost to Armada Mewtwo King in the end there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that with the upcoming Melee events, and Leffen just continuing to train and continuing to refine his skills, I'm sure that we'll start to see even stronger performances from him. And hopefully by the time EVO comes around, we'll see our boy in Grand Finals, probably against Armada, because, probably. But yeah, I'd love to see him get to that stage and challenge Armada for the for an EVO title and possibly take one home for TSM. But moving right along, so for our upcoming games in League of Legends, we have Team Envy and Team Immortals. And Harry, so they're at the bottom of the ladder right now.
Yeah.
So I guess my question isn't, do you think TSM will win, but how do you think TSM is going to win this? Do you think it'll be slow and steady? Are they going to try to pull out something wild? What are you kind of foreseeing in terms of TSM's approach to these hopefully extraordinarily easy games?
I hope it's the opposite of my sex life, which is wild and fast. I hope that I hope that they do try some stuff out. I mean, God knows how many times they've even played these teams in scrims, as it is. So I would treat it as a scrim per se, but I'd be like, you know what, have some fun out there. You know, don't get too stressed out about like making sure every single war is in the exact right place. You know, just try to have a little bit of fun. Because TSM individually, pound for pound, are so much better than these teams. It's actually disgusting. Like you go lane by lane, and the only positions that are even close are jungle, and that's about it. Eh, every other position is just going to be, in my opinion, a stomp. Like Pobal differs Bjergsen. I mean, and Ninja versus Bjergsen. I don't see these being gentle lanes. I think if TSM doesn't stop these games, I'd be pretty concerned because they should really convincingly take these. I don't think there's any excuse not to. I mean, they're better in every way. Frankly, they're better early. Maybe Envy have like an equal early game, but for the rest of the game, TSM is just such a superior and overwhelming force. I'd be shocked if both of these are 2-0s, maybe 1-2-1, but even then, that's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, I agree. I'd love to see them pull out something a little more interesting in terms of picks. Maybe we'll see Camille pick. Bjergsen's actually been practicing that from a couple replays that I've seen floating around on YouTube and a couple other places. He's actually been practicing Camille mid a little bit on and off. He's also been practicing Ari as well. So maybe we'll see a bit of diversity in TSM's
Oh
picks.
yeah, ours meta now again apparently. So hopefully we can see Bjergsen pick that up again. He was pretty good Ari back in the day. Uh, so hopefully he can pick that up again and you know, become senpai again.
Right. And to close this out, Kantos, you want to talk about our awesome Vainglory team and the upcoming start of the Vainglory split?
Why, of course I do. So, Vainglory, we've kind of talked about it with the FlashX interview. We have Immortals, who was the previous Hammer's Velocity roster. They, as FlashX actually said himself, are a rival team of sorts. For TSM, Hammer's Velocity was probably the second best North American team, maybe third best behind Gangstar Sirius, but still a really, really solid team in North America. And like FlashX said, a rival to TSM. So hopefully this will be a very interesting first game of the TSM Vainglory split. We're going to see how well TSM has been able to adapt to the meta versus create their own meta, as FlashX also mentioned previously. But either way, make sure to check them out and make sure that you go watch the TSM Vainglory games and support the TSM Vainglory guys. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And if you guys didn't check out that interview we did, Kantos and I did with FlashX, it was an extremely entertaining interview for both of us to do. FlashX is such a nice guy,
Yeah.
passionate about the game, just really easy and fun to talk to. So be sure to check that out. We'll have the link in the descriptions wherever you happen to be listening to this podcast for you guys to link back to that, as well as the links to all of these games if you like to catch replays of them. The melee games as well as the league games. All of that information will be in the description as well. Please feel free to reach out to us on Twitter. We check our Twitter very frequently. So start a conversation. Let us know that you're out there. Tell us that what you do and don't like about the podcast, and also feel free to converse with us on our Reddit posts. We look to those as a place where we can get feedback on the way we're doing. If you want to see more of one style of content, less of another, we are always open to suggestions and improving the quality of our podcast for you guys, the fans who are fans of TSM, who want to continue to see this brand grow, not just in the games that we're currently in, but also in any other game that they happen to invest in. Ultimate Marvel 3, Street Fighter, whatever. Just throwing some things out there that I personally would like to see. With all that said, though, Harry, Kantos, anything you guys want to toss in there before we wrap this up?
I mean, it's a shorter episode, but I mean, the games were so, man, they were so stompy for the most part. It was a lot to talk about, and then next week is not looking much better in terms of competitiveness. Um, secretly hoping Envy Immortals beats TSM so we can have like a 2-hour podcast on everything that went wrong. Probably not gonna happen though, and we're gonna be stuck with another like 50-minute podcast. But I can dream.
Yeah, you got to keep dreaming. What about you, Kantos? Anything you want to toss in there before we wrap up?
Yeah, let's kind of just bring forward a little news that we just got via Twitter. It looks like Doublelift has just joined Team Liquid for the rest of the split as their AD carry coming out of
Wait,
retirement.
what?
Yeah,
Is this...
he just
What the fuck?
Team Liquid just announced that on Twitter. Doublelift is going
Oh
to be
my
standing in for Team
goodness.
Liquid as their AD carry. So I certainly, as much as I'd really like to talk about that, I'd actually like to see.
Oh yeah,
how
never
it
mind.
goes.
We need to talk about this. What the fuck? No, wait, hold up. What?
Yeah, so it looks like, at least for the rest of the split, Doublelift will be joining Team Liquid to help out as their AD carry there. I'm not sure if this is going to be a permanent move. It may just be essentially a Keith McBrief move where they get somebody to finish out the split with them, and then maybe at the end of the split they'll kind of see how that goes. But it's definitely something that is important to TSM and TSM fans. So I guess we'll kind of see how it goes. And again, before I really talk about it more, I want to see how Team Liquid looks with Doublelift. So let's see how well Doublelift comes back out of his hiatus. And then obviously as we move forward through the split, we can continue to talk about what it might mean for the future of TSM. I know a lot of people were hoping, myself included, that Doublelift might come back and bring us back to some of our former glory, even though we are certainly doing much better. But that looks like that may be a possibility that we may not have that happen. So we will see. And before we really jump any guns, since this was just announced, I say that we just kind of announce it here and take it in stride and then see where it moves forward from here. But otherwise, really happy with a 4-0 weekend. It is the first 4-0 weekend that we have had. We have been rare on our 2-0s, and the fact that we got 2 of them right in a row was really nice. Against teams that are, I guess, struggling, but certainly not bottom of the barrel, at least in CLG's case. So definitely excited about a 4-0 weekend. Hopefully looking forward to another 4-0 weekend. Looking forward to hopefully Vainglory also winning. So let's just have a TSM weekend all around. Thank you guys all for listening to the podcast, and that's pretty much all I got.
Yeah, thank you all so much. We will look forward to covering this Doublelift rental out to Team Liquid and what it looks like for TSM in the coming weeks. Maybe it opens us up to a different AD carry, Arrow, possibly, maybe. We'll see.
Maybe.
But with all that, yeah, with all that said, thank you all so much for listening to this week's episode of Just Tiltum. We will see.
Oh, there's an update on TSM site now about Doublelift if you guys want to read that.
Oh gosh, all the news is.
Yeah. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, what a way to end a podcast. We had a very boring 4-0 week, and oh crap, we lost Doublelift.
I mean,
Actually,
okay.
looking at this though, I do want to just kind of make an update on that, and I know we're trying to close out the podcast. I apologize, Matil. But it does say that at the end of the spring split that his time on Team Liquid will be terminated, and his intention is to come back and try out for the position on TSM in the summer split. That is exactly what the Team Solo Mid News says here. It says his intention is to come back and try out for a position on TSM in the summer split. The situation will not impact Wild Turtle's position on the team at all. If all goes well and Doublelift passes our tryout for the summer split, our plan is to field a 6-man roster for the summer split and for Worlds. So that's just something to keep in mind. The move to Team Liquid is not permanent. It also said, and I missed this sentence, but it says Doublelift's position on Team Liquid will terminate at the end of the LCS 2017 spring split. So TSM Doublelift is not gone. It is just something that he is helping out on Liquid. So just to keep that in mind and to keep everything.
You're welcome, Liquid. What the hell?
Yeah.
Don't break him, god damn it.
Well, no, I think this will actually be good because they just tossed Piglet over to mid lane. So I think this is probably going to be an opportunity for Doublelift to sharpen his skills because with as little offense to Team Liquid as possible, and I promise, guys, we'll actually end the podcast very soon. With as little offense to Team Liquid as possible, when you have a team where you can't reliably say, I know top will carry, I know Piglet actually did well in mid lane, I'll admit.
Yeah, Piglet actually is a beast mid lane.
Yeah.
He actually It's sad, but he's like better than a lot of NA mid laners right now, judging by his first game performance.
But still, with that kind of infrastructure, I think this will be a prime opportunity for doublelift to kind of hone his skills, and then when he comes back to try out for TSM, he'll be sharper than ever, maybe even better. You know, if he starts solo carrying and possibly brings Team Liquid up to fourth place, we'll see. I don't even know if they can mathematically still get fourth place right now, honestly.
I don't know. I think they're almost guaranteed to be. Like, they would have to win legit the rest of their matches, I think, not to get to the relegations. It'd be a bit minor miracle. I think playoffs are almost gone for them. I might be wrong about that, but I'd be very shocked if they could get from playoffs from here. There's only 6 games left, and they got 2 wins. It'd be a bit of a miracle, but
Yeah.
um,
So we'll begin to monitor TSM double lift working as a double agent on Team Liquid.
imagine if it just like just immediately starts like running it down mid. It's like, yeah, this is your coup de grace, Team Liquid. You probably have to just blow it up. So in the relegation matches, just beat his ass off like
Well,
Sue's
no,
like
he
Reggie.
wouldn't even play in the regular relegation matches. Oh man, wow! But before this goes on too long, with us just cracking jokes
Like
about
Game of
double
Thrones.
lift. Oh god, this is going to be a very interesting end of the split. Once again, everyone, thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of Just Tiltum, featuring surprise news about double lift. Maybe next week we'll find out that we're getting. I don't even know. This is.
Doublelift joins SKT. I don't know.
He just starts team hopping all over the place. But thank you all once again. It's been a pleasure. And we'll see you all next week.
See you guys.
All right, bye.